With big legacy-defining matchups coming up this year, I figured that it would be a perfect time to make another GOAT video. But we're not going to be ranking a top 15 best fighters of all time. Instead, we're going to be discussing how each champion can either become the greatest of all time in their weight class, and if they've already accomplished that, how those fighters can become the greatest of all time in the entire sport, how they can become the undisputed GOATs. I'm going to have some pretty controversial takes. And so the first thing I'm going to do when I get to each champion is I'm going to go right after those controversial takes, or I'm going to discuss what they are, and I'm going to defend them instantly so that you guys can see where I'm coming from. But without further ado, let's get into this. The first fighter, the first champion that we are going to discuss, the guy who, in my opinion, is the furthest up on the GOAT list that is competing today, it is Islam Makhachev. I believe Islam Makhachev is already the second greatest fighter of all time. I think he's past GSP. I think that the only person above him is Jon Jones at the moment. And you know what? If you're one of these guys that thinks, well, I'm only counting people that didn't pop, well then, you may as well consider this guy the GOAT already. But he is the lightweight GOAT. Let's get that out of the way. So we are going to be discussing why Islam Makhachev, or how Islam Makhachev can become the undisputed GOAT, because it's pretty clear he broke the record for title defenses in the modern era at lightweight, and he did it with a better resume than Khabib, who was the former lightweight GOAT. He is the lightweight GOAT. But I think that honestly, he only needs one more win in order to become the undisputed GOAT. And I've thought about this a little bit, but for Islam Makhachev, I do not think it's necessary for him to beat Jack Della Maddalena and then get another win. I don't. Because if Islam Makhachev were to beat Jack Della Maddalena, he would have a record of 17-1. He would be on a 16-fight win streak, tying the longest win streak ever, tying Anderson Silva, and doing it in the modern era against much better levels of competition. And if you were to compare his resume to Jon Jones, GSP, I mean, he's already got Charles Oliveira. He's got Alexander Volkanovski 1.5 times, because, I say 1.5 times because we all know Volk was fat and off the couch in that second one. So I'm counting that as a half a win. But he beat Prime Volk when Volk had the lighter man skill, a full training camp ready to go in Australia. He beat him by decision, which is very impressive to beat a guy like Volkanovski by decision. He beat Dustin Poirier. Renato Moicano. That's not just Renato's a can, man. No, you can't call Renato a can. You'd never consider him a can unless he was fighting. Actually, you wouldn't consider him a can ever. If Renato Moicano was fighting anyone other than Islam Makhachev, you'd be taking him seriously as a lightweight contender. Okay? Drew Dober, Bobby Green. These are just throwaway wins. Drew Dober, Bobby Green. Dan Hooker. That might be his most underrated win. He treated Dan Hooker like a rag doll. Got him out of there in 1 minute. Dan Hooker is still in the top 10 today. Okay? Moises, Ramos, brother. Arman Sarukian. Okay? Like, this guy's resume is deep, and there's like 5 other wins that I don't even have to list. Those are his can wins, but there's 5 others to bolster all of that. So the point that I'm making is, if Islam Makhachev, who's already become the lightweight GOAT, beating Oliveira, Volkanovski, Poirier, Renato Moicano, if he can beat Jack Della Maddalena up a weight class, and JDM has a pretty solid welterweight resume at the moment. He just beat Bilal Muhammad. He's got a win over Gilbert Burns. He's got a pretty good resume he's putting together, and he's only 29. He's in his prime. If Makhachev can beat a prime Jack Della Maddalena at 170 to get a second belt, tying Anderson Silva's win streak in the modern era, I think that resume is better than anyone else's. And I do not think it's necessary for him to then defend it or beat Ilia Topuria at 155, which if he beats JDM, he'll never go back down to 155. But you may say that, well, if he beats JDM, he needs to then defend against Ilia and get that belt back, or, beat like a Shavkat or beat like a Sean Brady or something like that. But I just think that if you're looking at these other GOATs like Jon Jones, GSP, like, the standards for them just wouldn't be as high. I mean, Jon Jones has some great wins. He has Daniel Cormier a couple of times, even though the second one, you can't really count it because he popped. He's got Gustafsson. He's got Gane. Like, he's got a bunch of good wins, but I'm sorry, so does Islam Makhachev. You talk about Cormier, okay, Makhachev's got Volkanovski. You talk about Gus, okay, well, Makhachev's got Poirier, who's higher on the GOAT list. He's got Oliveira. Now he's going to have JDM. It's like, the standards for these other guys just wouldn't be as high. He does not need 2 more wins. I know that some people are going to say, well, that would only be like 6 title wins. Well, listen, back in the day, the guys that are now on the top of the GOAT list, like GSP, Jones, Mighty Mouse, they would fight a few times in the UFC. They would have a 3-fight win streak, and then they would fight for the title. So they'd be racking up a title defense in their 5th ever fight. Whereas today, you have to run through 10 fighters in order to fight for the belt in the first place. So you'll be like 12-0 in the UFC with 1 title defense. It's just different. And rising up the ranks, you're fighting people that would be like title contenders back in the day. Dan Hooker, that is a win that if you were to put him on any other former lightweight champion's resume, you'd be like, oh, that's a pretty good title defense. You got a Dan Hooker win. You get my point. I think just beating Jack Della Maddalena up a weight class in his prime, dude, the way JDM is looking right now, I think Islam Makhachev would be the GOAT. I know some people are going to be like, 1 more win. But again, you wouldn't hold these other guys to the same fucking standards. It's just the case. Okay? You just wouldn't hold them to the same standards. GSP, we're not saying, well, GSP didn't beat, he needs to come back and beat Bilal, and he needs to come back and beat this guy. Like, the strength of this resume, Arman Sarukian, that win has aged so well. Volkanovski, Poirier, Oliveira, Moicano, Dan Hooker, now JDM. Come on, man. And he beat Volk 1.5 times, not just once. I think that's a pretty good case for Islam Makhachev. So, GOAT status on the line. I know that some people aren't going to like that because, Makhachev's only been champ for a few years. And, in order to be the GOAT, you got to be champ for 10 years. But I favor quality over longevity. And if you look at a guy like Jon Jones, by the way, he's been champ for a long time. But let's not forget, he's taken throughout his career, he's been out of the cage for 5 years. Couple years off here, couple years off here, couple years off before fighting at heavyweight, couple years off to duck Tom Aspinall. So it's being the champ for a long time, it's okay, well, it's just sitting on the couch and not fighting. It doesn't necessarily make it more impressive than an active guy who fights the same amount, just doing it in a much shorter amount of time and doing it against better levels of competition. So, yeah, I really do think Makhachev is on the verge of becoming the undisputed GOAT. I think I make a pretty good argument for it. I do not think you could... who else would have a better resume than him if he beats Jack Della Maddalena? Nobody. But you'd still have people saying, well, he's right behind Aldo and Mighty Mouse now. Well, no. Let's get on to Dricus Du Plessis. Dricus Du Plessis just got a Khamzat Chimaev fight announcement, and I think that is a huge legacy-defining fight, okay? Because he's only been champ for a little bit. Guys, I'm just going to say it. I think he needs 1 more win. I know you guys are going to freak out. How dare this? We're not talking about undisputed GOAT. We're not talking about the sport. We're just talking middleweight. We are only comparing his resume to Anderson Silva, who I believe is the middleweight GOAT. Listen, I know Anderson Silva had a record of 17-1, and I know that if Dricus Du Plessis wins 1 more, he would only be 10-0. But I think that if there's ever a time where 10-0 is going to beat 17-1, it's with the quality of Dricus Du Plessis. All right, and just let me tell you, Anderson Silva, his win streak was great. His title defenses, this is the thing that people still need to, they can't get over it. Title defenses, bro, that would only be 3. Silva was fighting for the title after his UFC debut. After beating Chris Lieben, he got a title fight. If Dricus Du Plessis got a title fight after his UFC debut, he would have 9 title wins, okay? We have to have, different standards for these guys, man. And also, Anderson Silva's level of competition is just nowhere near that of Dricus Du Plessis. And it's not even just that fighters are better today, but the people that Dricus Du Plessis is beating these days have resumes of their own. They have all-time great middleweight resumes of their own. Anderson Silva has not beat a single all-time great middleweight other than Vitor Belfort. That's the one great middleweight he's beat. And I'm sorry, but I think Whitaker, I think Adesanya, I think both of those guys have better resumes than Vitor Belfort. Strickland, there's a conversation there, but I think that maybe Vitor is a better resume. But the point that I'm making is, outside of Vitor Belfort and Dan Henderson, which is a great win, 100%, You can just bring up Adesanya and Whitaker, and both of those guys are top 5 middleweights of all time. And I think that speaks for itself. Anderson Silva doesn't have a single win that's on the Whitaker level, that's on the Adesanya level. And then you're going to add in 2 times against Sean Strickland, who was a modern champion in the UFC, who has a ton of wins in the middleweight division. I know Strickland is falling off a little bit right now, but then again, he's got a pretty decent resume. He's been in the UFC for a long time. He's only lost a couple of fights. You got Darren Till, you got Derek Brunson. I know Anderson Silva beat Derek Brunson too, but this is the thing. I don't think Dricus Du Plessis would become the middleweight GOAT if his next title fight was against Imavov, or if his next title fight was against someone like Cal Baraujo. I think he would need 2 more against those guys. I think if he were to become the middleweight GOAT, I think you beat Imavov, and then you tie Anderson Silva, you beat Baraujo, and you become the middleweight GOAT. But I think Khamzat Chimaev, if you look at him, and you look at how he's the boogeyman of the sport, how he's arguably the greatest heavier weight class grappler the sport has ever seen. Just the way people view Khamzat. I don't think Anderson Silva ever fought someone. Maybe Vitor Belfort had that, mystique of, oh, this is the boogeyman back in the day, but this is just different. It's 2025. Khamzat Chimaev is submitting Robert Whitaker in 1 round. He had a win, although it was kind of a draw against Kamaru Usman. Khamzat Chimaev is one of the most dominant fighters that we've ever seen. One of the most formidable grapplers that we've ever seen. Merab beating Umar, you could say, well, that's a great win, but Umar's resume is not that good. He kind of just beat Sandhagen and that's it. Well, Khamzat hasn't just beat Gilbert Burns at this point. He's beat Robert Whitaker. He's beat Gilbert Burns. He has the draw against Kamaru Usman, which some people are going to consider a win. Like, Khamzat's been in the UFC for a while. We're still talking about him as being like this freak of nature grappler that nobody can stop. If Dricus Du Plessis can get a win over a prime Khamzat Chimaev, and he's beaten Khamzat in his prime, who is looked at as the boogeyman of grappling in the modern era, and he has wins over Robert Whitaker and Adesanya and Sean Strickland a couple of times, and then you can just rattle off the other ones, and people are going to say, well, that's not enough. Okay, well, most of Anderson Silva's wins are like, I can't even fucking name some of them, guys. I can't even name some of his wins. We're going to talk about Chael Sonnen. I'm sorry, Sean Strickland was an actual champion. He has a better resume than Chael Sonnen. That's Anderson Silva's 2-time win. The Strickland wins are better. Okay, you're going to bring up Derek Brunson. Okay, well, Dricus beat Derek Brunson too. In an older version, fair enough. Anderson Silva's Derek Brunson win might be better, but, he beat Darren Till. I think a Darren Till win is better than a bunch of Anderson Silva wins. I think a Darren Till win is better than a Forrest Griffin win. I think it's better than a Stephan Bonner win. I think it's on a similar level, given the eras and all that. I just think that, you're really... Listen, I think that some people might not like this because they still view Anderson Silva as like a top 5, top 8 fighter of all time. But I don't. I don't think Silva's in the top 10 anymore. And that's not because, Silva's an old head and all that. It's just because the UFC has only been around for 30 years. Because of that, we're going to have champions beating other greats. It's not like in other sports, the best basketball players from the 90s are never going to play the best basketball players of the 2010s. But the best fighters in the 2010s are going to fight the best fighters of the 2020s, like Volk versus Aldo, right? You get my point. Like, there's more crossover. We are actually seeing guys with good resumes fight each other these days. And since the sport has only been around for 30 years, that's only been a thing throughout the past 15 years, right? Because no one had a good resume back when Anderson Silva was fighting. And, it's like there was just no one really fighting in the sport. The gap between the best fighter in each division and the contenders was so much greater than the gap between the best fighters in the division today and the contenders. Right? You take a random contender, take like a Dustin Poirier. You put Dustin Poirier, who's never undisputed champ, in the 2000s with his skill level today, and that guy's winning 20 freaking titles. All right? I just don't think Anderson Silva's resume, because again, it's just going to be the 16 wins, all 12 title defenses. Who's he beating? Vitor Belfort, Dan Henderson. It kind of falls off big time after that, and those wins wouldn't even be as good as Khamzat Chimaev. I think beating Khamzat Chimaev in 2025, if you're Dricus Du Plessis, and Khamzat's never lost, is better than anything Anderson Silva has done. And this is not taken away from Anderson Silva. It's just Dricus would be more impressive, okay? And then he would have the Adesanya win. And then he would have the Whitaker win. And then he would have the Strickland wins. Yeah, I just think if you're going to look at their resumes side by side, I think Dricus with that Khamzat win is the best middleweight ever. I don't think he has to defend 3 more times. I don't think there's this idea, well, maybe you don't have to break the title defense record of your division these days, but you at least have to get half the amount of title defenses. No, I think that Khamzat Chimaev is a special contender. Again, if it was a Mavov, maybe he would need another one after that. But yeah, let's get on to the next one. Volk is already the 145-pound GOAT, but how can he become the undisputed GOAT? I think that if Alexander Volkanovski beats Movsar Evloev as an old man, he would be 37 when that fight happens. We were just talking about how there's a 35 curse. No one at 35 or above has ever won a title in the lighter weight classes. Volk just did it at 36. If he beats Movsar as an old man, he's right at the number 2 spot, son. He's right at 2. Okay? And Jon Jones may never fight again. Makhachev and Volk are going to be 1 and 2. If he beats Gene Silva after that, like if Volk came back, he won the belt against Lopez, right? If Volk beats Movsar and then beats a guy like Gene Silva or moves up and wins the title, he is the GOAT of the sport. Now, this is probably not going to happen. It's not that realistic because Movsar, that's a real tough fight for a 37-year-old Volk. Prime Volk, I think he easily wins that, but it's always, well, I don't know about easily, but he wins that. 37, that's a tough fight for 37-year-old Volk. We just have to say it how it is, even if you're picking him to win, which I probably will pick him to win. He wouldn't be the GOAT if he just beats Movsar, but if he wins again at 37 and a half against a killer like Gene Silva, who's trick-shotting people, or he moves up to 155 pounds and wins the title there after defending his belt again on his second title reign, and then he moves up and beats like Topuria or Oliveira, whoever has the belt, he's the fucking GOAT with the losses to Makhachev and Topuria. And that would be a rare case just because, like, yeah, he's got losses to Topuria and Makhachev. And this is also assuming that Topuria doesn't continue to win and Makhachev doesn't continue to win it. Like, we also have to take that into account when we're talking about the undisputed stuff. Because, you know, if Makhachev wins 2 more fights and Volk does what I'm saying he has to do, then Makhachev will still be the GOAT. But, like, assuming that everyone else's career is not going to have, like, you know, the perfect ending, this would be GOAT potential for Volk, dude. I'm telling you. Because his resume would be Max Holloway 3 times. Prime Max. Jose Aldo at 32 years old on a 2-fight win streak. Okay? Diego Lopez. Yair Rodriguez, Chad Mendez, Brian Ortega, Korean Zombie, Darren Elkins, who was on a 6-fight win streak, Movsar Evloev as a 37-year-old, not Movsar's 37, Volk's 37, and then Gene Silva, or then beating Oliveira or winning the rematch against Topuria at lightweight, he would be the fucking GOAT, okay? So let's get on to the next one. Alexandre Pantoja. This is another controversial one, okay? I think Alexandre Pantoja would be the flyweight GOAT if he wins 2 more times. I've been thinking about this, and I know that this is going to be like, oh my God, here we go again. Lucas is famous for making people the GOAT after 1 win. He's been the champion. He's defended his belt like 3 times as it is. We do not hold former champions, like guys from back in the day, to the same standards. Because if you look at people like Pantoja, if he beats Kai Kara France, and I should say 1 more, but if he beats Kai Kara France, I think he's on par with DJ. And this is why. You look at DJ's resume. Henry Cejudo, who he's 1-1 with. Okay? That was a draw. Or he lost. But I think that people say robbery. I don't think that was a robbery. It was too close. 1-1 with Cejudo. Or if you're going to be generous, a draw with Cejudo and a win over Cejudo. And then he's got the Benavidez wins, which I think are on par with the Brandon Royval wins. And you may say, no, Benavidez is one of the GOATs of flyweight, man. Not Royval. Well, Royval's continuing to win. He just got a win over Tatsuro Taira, who is undefeated in the UFC up until that point, who had been doing work. Royval continuing to win kind of makes him a bit of like a Benavidez today, right? And Pantoja's beat him twice. And one of those was for the fucking title. One of those was when Royval had proved himself to be good enough that he was fighting for the belt to begin with. And so if you look at DJ's best wins, Cejudo, Benavidez a couple times, it drops off of a cliff after that. You got Ali Bugatinov. You got a draw with this guy that I don't even remember. You got Catasau. You got Dodson, which is like, the Dodson win is like the equivalent of an Alex Perez win, in my opinion. But it really goes from Cejudo, Benavidez, Dodson, the rest. Whereas Pantoja, Moreno twice, Brandon Royval twice, Manel Cap, right? A little bit lower, Steve Ercik, Kai Kara France. One more after that. Then you'd have the Alex Perez. Then you'd have the Kaya Sakuda, right? And then you'd have some of the other ones. It's just a more stacked resume. And Pantoja would be 15, because I added the other one. He would be 15-3 versus Mighty Mouse would be 13-1. There's not a huge difference as far as ratio is concerned, right? He'd have a couple more wins, 2 more losses, but the quality would be that much better. And I'm not saying he'd be the undisputed GOAT, but again, we're not holding these older champions to the same standards as that of today. We talk about DJ. He has 10 defenses. He was fighting for the belt in his 3rd ever flyweight fight. And then the title defenses are just not consistently against the same levels of competition. Like Pantoja's fighting Cap. People forget that even happened. And Manel Cap's about to fight for the title again. So that win has aged well. He's beat Royval twice. He's beat Moreno twice as a former champion. His losses are like to Davidson Figueiredo, which I think are on par with like the Henry Cejudo loss for Demetrius Johnson. So I think that one more, if he beats Kai Kara France, that's a very solid win. Kai Kara France, that's a step above Alex Perez, Steve Ercik, because he knocked Ercik out. That's a step above that. Maybe one level below Moreno, probably on the same level as Royval. If he gets a quality win like that, I think he's basically tied with DJ. And if he wins again, I think he's the flyweight GOAT. Okay? I know that there's some people that are going to say, well, if he beats Kai Kara France, then we really got to start talking about him as being up there. No, dude. He's up there now. Like, he's in the mix as we speak. Okay? He's in the mix today. He's like number 2, number 3 all time today. If he beats Kai Kara France, he's right there. Right there. There's just, listen, DJ, he was so dominant. I understand that. But Pantoja's quality of wins would just be too much. I think 2 more and this guy's the GOAT at flyweight. Yeah, let me know what you guys think about that. Let's get on to the next one. All right, Jack Della Maddalena. Let's see. How can he become the welterweight GOAT? Well, this is a tough one because the welterweight division is, well, first off, he just won the belt and he just got his best win, and that's the best win by a long shot. Belal Muhammad, that's an amazing win. Belal was on a crazy win streak. Belal was unbeaten for years. Belal beat Leon Edwards, who beat Kamaru Usman twice. Like, Belal's resume is pretty solid. That's an amazing win for Jack Della Maddalena. If Belal had beat Jack Della Maddalena, he is 100% like top 4 all-time welterweights. Maybe top 3. But he just got his first title win. I believe he is 8-0 in the UFC right now. But GSP is the GOAT at welterweight, and GSP is like a top 5 all-time fighter. So for a guy like Jack, it's going to be harder to become the welterweight GOAT. I think if he beats Islam Makhachev, though, I think he's top 10 all-time. I think he's automatically top 10 all-time. If he beats Islam Makhachev on a 15-fight win streak, the lightweight GOAT, who has an aura of invincibility right now, after beating Belal Muhammad, and he has wins over Gilbert Burns and Randy Brown, that's a really solid win. Randy Brown, that's a better win than Kevin Holland. I just listed Kevin Holland just because, he got that. And he has a couple others as well. Makhachev and Muhammad, those are amazing wins. Makhachev's a top 10 all-time fighter. Belal Muhammad was arguably already a top 5 welterweight. Maybe the 5th best welterweight, 6th best welterweight after the loss. That would be huge. If he then beats Sean Brady, he's getting up there if he beats Sean Brady after that. Because Sean Brady is a monster. I mean, we've seen what he's doing to people like Leon Edwards, what he did to Gilbert Burns. That would be an amazing win. And then if he goes out there and beats Ian Gary, I think he's neck and neck with GSP. If he beats Makhachev and he has the Muhammad win and he beats Sean Brady, okay, who's only had 1 loss in the UFC to Belal Muhammad, and he beats Ian Gary, he's neck and neck with GSP. Then if he beats Shavkat or Buckley, he is the welterweight GOAT. He passes GSP. I think there might be an argument if he beats Islam Makhachev and then he beats Sean Brady. There's an argument that he's neck and neck right there, but I'm not going to say that yet. I think if he beats Ian Gary's neck and neck, and I think if he wins one more against Shavkat, if he did this, he'd be undefeated, by the way, in the UFC. I know he's not undefeated in general, but we're talking about the big leagues, the UFC only. He'd be 12-0 in the UFC. That 12-0, we talk about like Khabib, one of the greatest, 13-0. This 12-0 would be way better. Because Khabib has wins over Poirier, which are great. McGregor, Gaethje. JDM would have a win over Muhammad. Champion. Maybe not Poirier level, but definitely like Gaethje or above. I think that's a better win than Justin Gaethje. And then he'd have a win over Makhachev. That's better than anything Khabib has done, right? Because Makhachev is the fucking lightweight GOAT. He passed Khabib, right? So then he would have guys like Sean Brady. We talk about, again, the 13-0. That's a great record. But after the Gaethje, Poirier, and McGregor wins, it kind of falls off a bit. This wouldn't be falling off after Makhachev and Muhammad. He would still have the Gilbert Burns one. He'd have Sean Brady in his prime, Ian Gary, who's looking really good, Shavkat again. Like, that 12-0 would be, like, that'd be like number 2 all-time 12-0. Okay? So, yeah, I think, again, if he beats the lightweight GOAT, Islam Makhachev in his prime, Sean Brady after that, for his second title defense, Ian Gary, that'd be 3 title defenses. He'd be top 5 all-time right there. You could make the argument that he's past GSP right there, but I'll say for sure, one more after that, he's the welterweight GOAT. So yeah, you can become the welterweight GOAT with only 4 title defenses, brother. Let's get on to the next one. Ilia Topuria. Again, we're going to assume that all these other guys aren't like accomplishing what I said they needed to accomplish, because like if Volk gets 2 more wins and JDM just racks up a bunch of wins, if Ilia Topuria does what I'm about to tell you he needs to do, it's like, all right, well, these other guys are still competing with him. So it's just like if everyone else has like the average Joe simulated career mode career from now on, Ilia Topuria will just have to do this. So Ilia Topuria cannot become the GOAT of a certain weight class. And I say that because he will not stick around. We know that Ilia Topuria is looking to retire on top. We know that Ilia Topuria is looking to get in and get out. He left featherweight before he could rack up more wins to become the greatest featherweight of all time. So he's not going to go back down. He will never achieve GOAT status at featherweight. And I don't think with 1 or 2 or 3 wins, you can be the greatest lightweight of all time. I don't think that's the case. So Ilia Topuria is going to have to opt to be the undisputed GOAT. And I think it's possible. I think that if Ilia Topuria beats Charles Oliveira, that would be necessary. I think he's top 5 all time. And you may say, oh, well, 1 more win and he's top 5. What the hell, man? Max Holloway in his prime knocks him out. Alexander Volkanovski, that's an amazing win. Volkanovski just won again. I know Volk was coming off of the loss, but he didn't just catch Volk with a measly punch with no sting on it that knocks out someone chinny. He caught Volk with the perfect punch and checkmated him. Josh Emmett, Bryce Mitchell, solid wins. Those are solid wins. Yusuf Salal, that's aging really well. Since then, Yusuf Salal's been undefeated. Okay? Those are just solid wins. Yusuf Salal, Mitchell, Emmett, okay, they're not going to make you the GOAT, but they're pretty good. And now you put the Max Holloway win on top of that, top 10 all-time fighter. You put the Volkanovski win on top of that, top 10 all-time fighter. You put Oliveira on top of that, top 25 all-time fighter. I think he's top 10 or top 5. If he then beats Islam Makhachev, let's say Islam even loses, but he's still the lightweight GOAT. If he beats Makhachev and Oliveira and has the wins over Emmett, Mitchell, Zalal, and a couple others, and has Max and Volk, I think he's the greatest of all time, because that would be 3 top 10 fighters. Okay? All in their prime. I know beating Makhachev would be less hyped if he comes off of a loss to JDM. All right? But still, he would be basically undefeated at lightweight, even though he's lost way back in the day. But, he wouldn't have lost his belt at lightweight. Oliveira, top 25. Makhachev, top 5 right now. Volk, top 5 right now. Max Holloway, top 10 right now. All of these guys in their prime. He would be the GOAT of the sport. Okay? If he doesn't beat Makhachev. Now, if Makhachev wins against JDM and then moves down for one last fight, and he beats him when Makhachev is on the 16-fight win streak, forget about it. You can't make an argument against that. If Makhachev never fights Ilia Topuria, Topuria would have to fight Oliveira, beat him, and then win 2 more times at lightweight. Winning 1 more time at lightweight would put him like number 2 all time. If he beats Oliveira and then Arman, who we know Arman is really good, and we know Arman would have to get another win in order to even fight for the belt again, so that would mean his resume would be even better by the time Ilia Topuria fights him. If he beats Oliveira and then Arman, is he the GOAT undisputed? I don't know, but he's basically right up there. If he wins again after that and defends against like Pimblett or something, if Pimblett gets another win, he is the GOAT without even having to fight Makhachev. If Makhachev like loses to JDM, we'll definitely see Ilia Topuria fight him. If Makhachev beats JDM, then Ilia Topuria is definitely going to have to get a couple more wins. And if that's the thing. If Makhachev beats JDM, Ilia Topuria beating Oliveira would be great. But he would need the Arman win. He would need another win. And if Makhachev wins again after that, he would need like another win. You know what I mean? So it would just be a race between Topuria and Makhachev at this point, but you get my point. Let's get on to the next one. Merab Dvalishvili. He's already the 135-pound GOAT. I think most fans agree with that. I think probably like 80% of people would say, yeah, Merab's the best bantamweight of all time right now. How can he become the undisputed GOAT? Well, I think he needs to obviously beat Sean O'Malley again. That would bump him up on the GOAT list, for sure. He's already top 10. If he defends against Sandhagen, like, we're talking top 5 territory. Again, like this is assuming that not all these other guys are going to have the pitch perfect career. Again, this is assuming that everyone else is on career mode, simulated career mode, having mid-ass careers, having a 500 record, winning, losing, okay? Because, if all these other guys do what they need to do, we're going to have 10 more wins that Merab has to get. But, we're going to have to see the O'Malley win again. We're going to have to see him beat a guy like Sandhagen and defend one more time. And so then he would have O'Malley twice, Sandhagen, Aldo, Cejudo, Umar, O'Malley. We already said O'Malley twice. Jan. Dude, Jan, a win against... That's his best win, period. Then Sean O'Malley, former champion. Umar Nurmagomedov. Cejudo, old man who still got it. Cejudo looked good in his last fight despite him losing. Jose Aldo before beating Martinez, before coming back and looking good against Batista. There was years that we had to wait to see Aldo fight after losing to Merab, and he came back and fucking won. So that's not like old washed up Aldo, even though it's older Aldo, but it's not washed up Aldo. It's old Aldo, not prime Aldo. But still, if he beats Sandhagen, O'Malley in the rematch, and then gets the 145-pound title, like, bro, how can you not say this guy's the GOAT? He would have Jan, O'Malley twice, Sandhagen, Umar, which will age well. The Umar win will age well. Aldo, who's literally top 15 all time. Cejudo, which is Demetrius Johnson's best win, but obviously older Cejudo, but still old man that still has it, Cejudo. And then he would beat like Evloev or Gene Silva or fucking Volk, bro. He would be the freaking best fighter of all time, man. So, yeah, he's 3 fights away. That's the thing, though. All of these guys are like 3 fights away. Well, not all of them, because JDM is not 3 fights away. Pantoja's a couple away, but most guys are like a couple away. When you're at the point of your career, like a Merab or a Topuria, it's really hard to keep winning after a couple of title defenses because, you're getting older, your body's getting more beat up. This is a big ask. Like, it's not a small task to beat O'Malley and Sandhagen. And even if he does that, which I think he's capable of doing, it's not easy to go up and then win the 45-pound title after more wear and tear after those next 2 fights. So, these are really tough. Like, it's not easy for Topuria to beat Makhachev and Oliveira back-to-back. Like, those are extremely tough fights. We don't know if he even beats Oliveira. You know what I mean? So, yeah, let's get on to the next one. Aspinall. How can Aspinall become the heavyweight GOAT? Not undisputed, but heavyweight. I think that he needs to beat Jon Jones and then have one more win. So if he beats Jon Jones, would that be prime Jon Jones? No. It'd be slightly old man Jon Jones, not washed Jon Jones, champion level Jon Jones. Jones probably beats everyone else at heavyweight right now, so we can't say, oh, it's old man Jones. Like, he's literally the freaking champ. But if he beats Jon Jones, I think he's very close to Stipe. But if you need one more, then, like, if he beats Gon and Jon Jones, he passes Stipe. And people are going to be like, oh, no. Come on, dude. Jon Jones and Gon and Pavlovich and Volkov and Blades. You're going to say DC twice. Okay, Jon Jones beat DC. All right? And if he doesn't beat Jon Jones, if he doesn't fight Jon Jones, I think that he needs to beat Gon, Almeida, and then one more. Like, if he gets 3 more wins, he's the heavyweight GOAT. Arguably 2 more, to be honest. Arguably 2 more. Gon, Almeida. I mean, could Stipe's resume compare? Because think about it. Stipe wasn't undefeated. And ratio of wins to losses count. Losses do count. Stipe lost to Dos Santos. He's 1-1 with Dos Santos. He lost to Ngannou. He's 1-1 with Ngannou. It's not like he's just undefeated at heavyweight up until his fight with Jones. Like, he lost to a couple other guys in his career. The Stefan Struve loss doesn't really count because there was an eye poke, but Tom Aspinall would be undefeated. So if he's undefeated against Gon, Almeida, Pavlovich, Volkov, Blades. Granted, Pavlovich doesn't have the same resume as Junior Dos Santos, and he doesn't have the same resume as Verdum. I get that, which is why I think, maybe 3 more if Jones is not part of the equation. But if he beats Jones, he needs 1 more to become the heavyweight GOAT. If he doesn't, he needs 3 more. And yeah, 3 more wins. Tom Aspinall is the heavyweight GOAT and can retire on top. So let's get on to the last one. Magomed Ankalaev. This is a really difficult one. How can he become the light heavyweight GOAT? Again, he's going to need a lot more. He's going to need to beat Alex Pereira twice, which Pereira is a top 10 all-time fighter. So that would be amazing. But he already has a win over Jan Blachowicz, in my opinion. I don't think that was a draw. I think that was a robbery. I think that was the clearest first round to Magomed ever. If you just rewatch it, and then he won the last 2 rounds. So he should have beat Jan Blachowicz. I think that's even more clear than Demetrius Johnson not being given the win against Cejudo in the rematch. That's more of a draw than Magomed versus Jan Blachowicz. But yeah, if he beats Alex Pereira again and then beats Yuri, I think he's getting close. But again, it's like the guy that's the light heavyweight GOAT happens to be like, the best fighter on the all-time list. So I think if he defends twice more after that. The thing is, after beating Alex Pereira and Yuri has a really good resume. I would argue Yuri Prohaska's resume is honestly on par with Gustafsson, if not better. I think Yuri Prohaska is like the modern-day Alexander Gustafsson. Like, he's going to be the best fighter of the modern era at light heavyweight to never win a belt. Because he's not lost to anyone other than Alex Pereira. He's beaten everyone else. And he's beaten Glover Teixeira, Rakic. He just beat Jamal Hill, former champion. Like, Yuri's resume is solid. He beat Ozdemir, knocked him out. Dominic Reyes, that win is aging well. So, yeah, that would be amazing. But after that, light heavyweight is so shallow that I don't know if the guys he'd be fighting after that, assuming if he beats Yuri, that means Yuri beats Olberg. Like, he'd be fighting people that don't have great resumes that the UFC is like, all right, who can we just give a title fight to, because there's really no one we can think of. So I think he would need 2 more. So that means his resume would be Rakic, Blachowicz, Pereira twice, Santos, Walker, Ozdemir, Krylov, Yuri Prohaska, Azamat, whatever. 1 more guy, I think then he is. So I think he needs 4 more wins. Because the thing is, even though Jones has like 10 plus title wins, he was fighting for the belt after a couple of wins in the UFC, whereas Magomed had to get like, a 10, 11 fight win streak to even fight for the belt. And those wins are pretty solid. Santos wasn't totally washed, but older Santos, fair enough. Ozdemir, that's pretty good. Krylov, that's okay. Rakic, that's okay. Prime Rakic, that's okay, man. That's better than the Anthony Smith win that Jones has. Blachowicz, that's a really solid win he has against Blachowicz. I count that as a win because I think that was a robbery. And then Pereira twice, top 10 all-time fighter. That's not Daniel Cormier level necessarily, but that's solid. Yuri Prohaska, that's like the modern-day Gus. Couple more. I think that makes him the light heavyweight GOAT. And keep in mind, just because he would be the light heavyweight GOAT, does that make him past Jon Jones in general? Well, Jones still has the Gon win, the old man Stipe win. So it's like he did some other work at heavyweight too. But yeah, I think if Magomed gets this, like, he's the light heavyweight GOAT. So yeah, that's it. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. Again, we're assuming that most of these other fighters, when we're talking about a specific champion, we're assuming that not everyone's going to have the pitch perfect ending. Like, because if all these guys just continue to win, then they're kind of like staying at the same level. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know who's going to pull ahead. If Dricus continues to win, Pantoja, Volk, all these other guys, it just becomes that much harder for everyone to become the GOAT. So yeah, let me know what you guys think in the comments. Until next time.